A debate has been sweeping across NBA Twitter over the last couple days about whether or not Damian Lillard is a superstar. In my opinion, the answer is yes. Dame is an NBA 75 player, has made numerous All-NBA teams and All-Star appearances, and has been a top 10 player when healthy for years at this point. The debate started because of a clip from a Jason Tatum-Taylor Rooks interview, where Taylor Rooks said that Kyrie Irving is a superstar, but that Damian Lillard needs a little bit more. This clip exploded after a couple tweets about it went viral, and all of a sudden, my entire timeline around midnight was debating Kyrie versus Damian Lillard, but even more so, debating what it means to be a superstar in the NBA. The term superstar has long been used in basketball discussions to denote the highest tier of player, only really behind the best in the world. However, nobody can agree on who exactly is a superstar. Everyone has vastly different criteria, ranging from if you haven't won an MVP and a championship you don't qualify, to if you can make All-NBA first team you're a superstar, to anyone that's a household name fits the bill. My own personal definition has evolved constantly as I have grown as a basketball fan, and I'm sure it will continue to change. But before we get into my personal definition, let's talk about what makes superstardom in the NBA so unique. In other American sports, players are referred to as superstars often by fans and commentary crews alike when referring to exceptional talents. However, only in the NBA is that term so sacred. If I went on Twitter right now and tweeted out Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a superstar, I would receive a ridiculous amount of hate comments saying you're crazy, not even close, he's not on the level of this or that player, etc. When you refer to a player as a superstar in basketball discourse, you are saying that they are within the upper echelon. Superstardom is reserved for exclusively the best of the best, no exceptions. The question is, why is this just a basketball thing? My theory is that it comes from how rankings-focused basketball is in general. From what I've seen, which is admittedly an NBA-centric perspective as a massive basketball fan, especially when compared to other sports, there's no American sports community that ranks players the way NBA fans and personalities do. Every preseason we rank players, every regular season we rank players, at the All-Star break we rank players, every playoffs we rank players, following the finals we rank players. It is a cycle that everyone is guilty of. I literally just made a point guard tier list a week ago, link in the description by the way. Fans of other sports do this, but not to the level that NBA fans do. I think part of this is just due to how basketball is set up as a sport. There's no other American sport where players impact the game consistently on both sides of the ball the way it happens in basketball, giving a ton of opportunities to evaluate players. LeBron James can hit 3 threes in a row on one side and then get 3 blocks on the other side of the court in the span of 6 possessions. Historic and career-high stat lines can happen on basically any given night. Additionally, in a sport like football, it's hard to compare a QB and a defensive end who have vastly different roles. You certainly can, but it's tough. In basketball, while a point guard and center have varying duties, their responsibilities are far more similar, thereby lending the sport to many more opportunities for the comparisons we constantly see, like making top 15 player in the league lists, including point guards, small forwards, shooting guards, power forwards, and centers. And with more chances for comparison, people are going to compare, so terms like superstar become cemented in our minds as a way to quickly portray these rankings. You think a player is top 6 in the world? Well, then you probably think he's a superstar. So you'll just say that instead of saying why, you have a guy ranked at exactly 6th in the league. Of course, that also brings up the question, what makes a player a superstar? So let's talk about the definitions of superstar. I tweeted out a couple days ago asking y'all, what's your definition of a superstar in the NBA? And your responses were ridiculously varied, and it really showed how divided the NBA world is on the topic. So let's go over some of the most common definitions that came up. The first section of responses is what we'll call accolade-based. This group of responses said things such as, you must have MVPs and championships, or you must have been an All-NBA first teamer for this number of years, etc. This argument gives an objective definition for superstardom. If you've won an MVP and you've won a championship, you are a superstar. Or if you've made All-NBA 5 out of your 10 years in the league, you could fit the criteria as a superstar. Which is helpful because that removes a lot of the opinion-based stuff, but I'm not really a fan. You can't tell me a guy like Joel Embiid isn't a superstar because he doesn't have MVPs and championships. The guy's finished second in MVP voting twice, led the league in scoring, dominated night in and night out for years now, but due to positional restrictions being a center with the NBA format, I don't like the All-NBA format, I think it should be positionless. That's a topic for another video. He doesn't have an All-NBA first team on his resume. That just feels wrong to me. For me personally, you cannot tell me Joel Embiid is not a superstar the way that he plays and the way that he dominates the game. he's a superstar in my eyes, so I don't like definitions like this. You could also have a situation where a guy like Luka Doncic, who, say you need 5 all-NBA first teams to enter the conversation, or MVPs and championships. Luka, for me, is like a borderline top 5 guy. You could make the argument that he's like top 3, top 5, top 6, 7, whatever. He is up in that category. He is a superstar in my eye. Just because he doesn't have MVPs and championships, because he's been in the league for like 4 seasons at this point, where he's made all-NBA team every single year but his rookie season, he is a superstar. So I don't like this criteria that people put together. I don't think there's any objective way to create criteria to become a superstar. You can have that for yourself, but in terms of finding a true definition, I just don't think it works. Then there's a large portion of people that mention a player's notoriety. Basically, if they're really good and a household name that a lot of people know, they can be classified as a superstar. I don't really love this either, because I think a lot of people's knowledge about players is situational. It comes up, based on where you are geographically, just who you talk to, but this gave me a fun idea. So I asked my dad, who's a somewhat casual basketball fan, my girlfriend, who really only hears about basketball through me, and my mom, who doesn't really watch basketball at all, to each name me as many NBA players as they could in 90 seconds each, and I compiled their list. So with the 3 of them, this is their list of players that they were able to name, thereby making them, household names for them. Ty Jerome, Luke Winstort, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Seth Curry, Steph Curry, Zion Williamson, Joel Embiid, Josh Giddey, Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Alexei Pokusevski, Damian Lillard, Kemba Walker, Anthony Davis, DeAndre Hunter, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, and Dennis Rodman. As you can see, it's a wild list. You'll see some traditional superstar names: LeBron, Giannis, Shaq, Jordan, Durant, Embiid, Steph, etc. You'll also notice a lot of Thunder bias in there, because of course they all hear about the Thunder through me, thereby making guys like Poku, Shai, Dort, Ty Jerome, and Josh Giddey all superstars, which I'm personally okay with, but I'm sure not many of you are watching this video. And then you'll see a mix of a bunch of other names that mainly came from my dad's, a casual watching of basketball and some daily fantasy sports knowledge. So by the definition of do casual fans know these players, these are the superstars in the league, and obviously, it's not a great list. This shows the clear possibility of bias coming from fandom by association or geographic stuff. It also has a lot of noticeable omissions. A guy like Kawhi Leonard, who I firmly believe is a superstar. He's been one of the most dominant playoff players for years at this point. He's got multiple finals MVPs, can be the best player in a championship team. He doesn't make the list because he's kind of more low-key. He's not a guy that has a lot of flashy plays. He doesn't really dunk on people that much. He doesn't have a ton of commercials or endorsements outside of like New Balance. So because he's low-key and not really a household name as much as some of those other guys, he's not a superstar by that definition, which I don't like either. Jokic also misses the cut as a player who isn't super flashy, but he's a back-to-back MVP. And if his team is fully healthy, there's a chance he could have made a finals run. So it just doesn't work. Guys are going to get left off by using this type of criteria. It doesn't make sense to me. Then there was probably the largest group of people that said it's based on where a player is ranked in the NBA. Are you top 3, top 5, top 10, top 15? Based on personal preference, you are a superstar. And this is where I personally stand. The number changes a lot for me, but for me, I see roughly around the top 10 to 12-ish players. That number can change, like I said, as superstars in the league. I think this offers the most flexibility as a definition in an ever-changing league. However, this brings up a whole nother issue as player rankings change every single season. Hell, every single month, I rethink my player rankings. Every time I see a player go out and drop 50, I'm like, do I have them ranked too low in my mind? Like, what tier are they on with other players? You have young players who continue to get better. The NBA has never been so talented, and so having a concrete ranking almost feels obsolete. Picking between guys like Luka, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron, Steph, Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, like who's in your top 5, 6, 7, whatever, it's all subjective and impossible to have a right answer. I can go ahead and say like, oh, these guys are my top 5, then what if a young player like a Luka Doncic did this past season, continues to elevate his game, pushes his team to the Western Conference Finals? Then who do I push out? So it's hard to continue to make those exchanges and trades within a ranking. So knowing exactly who is in my top 10 or 12 at any moment, it can change basically every single day. So it feels like there's no real way to truly say who is a superstar with that way either. I think there's no true way to say who is a superstar in general. There were other answers like a player that can be the best player on a championship team, which I think is decent, but once again, really subjective. What if you have a player like a Damian Lillard, who someone doesn't think is a superstar, but you give him a team of like all-star caliber players 1 through 10, and he is technically the best player and they win a championship? Then he technically can be the best player on a championship team. So that's kind of tough. You had people who said a player that has been at one point considered the best in the league, which is I don't agree with, because NBA fans never agree on anything. They never agree on who is the best player in the league. It really doesn't happen. Even if we had a player out there averaging like 50 points per game, defensive player of the year level defense, sweeping in the playoffs, there would still be people who's like, oh, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that. It just doesn't work. And then there are people who say, if you have to ask, they aren't a superstar, which is hilarious because that's how this whole debate started. There were a million other responses too, but that'd make an hour-long video, so I cut some of those out. But out of all the responses, I think Phil had the best definition when he said, I don't think it's a real thing. It's an ambiguous term people use that has very vague and subjective guidelines and doesn't really provide anything but a point of argument. Anyone can have a wildly different definition, so there's not much of a point to debate about it. This is probably the answer. However, the nature of the NBA is debate, so it continues. And when it doesn't go beyond basketball, get personal and everything, debate can be really fun. We've all debated with friends about the league's best players, which teams are real contenders, and who the GOAT is. Everyone has done it at some point. Talking basketball with people is a passion of mine and is the whole reason why I started my Twitter and this YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to, by the way. So what conclusion can we come to in this video? I don't really know. I guess that superstardom is really abstract and hard to truly gauge. I personally, going back to the beginning of this whole thing, I think Dame is a superstar. Others think that tier is reserved just for guys like LeBron, KD, and Steph. Some others think it's just whoever has a popular household name. Just as with any NBA topic, it's fun to debate and will be debated endlessly, as there is no true answer or precedent in other sports like we talked about. Some topics have gotten very old and are just kind of annoying at this point, the GOAT debate, but there are consistently new narratives and players to evaluate, things to rank. Someone once tweeted that the NBA is basically a sports soap opera with all the off-court interactions, moments, and drama, and they are absolutely right, and these conversations are kind of part of that. There's no league that lends itself as much to comparison as the NBA, and that's part of the fun of being a fan of it. And so the cycle continues. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I know it was really different, but it was really fun to work on, and I enjoyed making it a lot. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. It helps me out a ton. I appreciate y'all watching, and I will see you all later. A real one, say it back.